All right, you guys, so let's take a look at what we had going on today. We're going to do a quick review of position. We got a nice handout today that I think describes it fairly well. All right, so it says the position property determines in what manner an item is positioned on the page or relative to one another. By default, the position is set to static, with elements displaying on the page in the order they appear in the document, and then they get into some more details. So static element. The static element the static property, or the static quality of the position property, it says the element displays on the page in the order it appeared in the document. Top, right, bottom, left, and z-index properties have no effect when used with static. Not stackable due to z-index restrictions. So basically what they're saying is static is just going to fall one right after another, right? It's not going to take into account any type of positioning. It's just going to, how you write it in the code, it's just going to fall that way. By default, position is set to static, so that's normal. Relative, though, is similar to static, but you're able to to offset the element by the top, right, bottom, or left. And let's see, absolute, it says element position relative to its first non-static ancestor element. So similar to relative, and then it may be offset by top, right, bottom, left, and z-index properties. So once again, so relative, if I understand this correctly, relative, when you make something relative and you, let's say, put it left, you put the position relative left by 30 pixels, it will take where it used to be, right? And then it moves over 30 pixels. So if you say, let's see, is that the right way to do it? All right, so let's say the element's right here, and you say relative left 30 pixels, then here's where it used to be. It's going to move over left 30 pixels from where it used to be. And furthermore, it leaves a ghost in place of its last remaining position, or its last position. So any other elements will not go in that space. So relative 30 degree or 30 pixels to the left is relative to where it used to be to where it is now. If you do it absolute, then the element positioned is relative to its parent. So if you have an element again over here and you say, here's my element, here's my whole body of my page, right? If this element is just sitting inside the body, then if you say position absolute and you say left 30 pixels, then I'm going to take the left side of your page or your body, and it would insert a margin 30 pixels in between your element and the left side of the body. So as opposed to taking where it used to be with the relative, I'm having a hard time seeing myself. If you take where it used to be in the relative and move it 30 to the left, boom. If you take it absolute from here and you say 30 from the left, it'll go to the parent, which is the body, and it'll go to the left side of the body, and it'll insert 30 pixels between the element and the body and put it over here. Now, the fixed position, it doesn't take into account the parent or any of these things, not specifically. What it's doing is it's positioning itself relative to the browser window. So again, if I say, I believe I'm correct in the way I'm describing this, if I say this element right here is going to be fixed, then if it's fixed right there, 30, let's say 30 pixels to the left of, I think it's going to be from this side, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's 30 pixels from this side. But either way, it's your browser window, the entire browser window. Wherever you fix it with the coordinates, and let's say you stick it right there with 30 pixels over and 30 pixels from the top, then no matter what happens as you scroll through your, if I'm scrolling, then this is going to always stay there no matter what. Everything else is going to move around it or through it. This is going to remain on top. and it's going to be fixed there. So it's good for like a fixed, I'm sorry, it's good for like a fixed nav bar. So if you have a navigation bar that you want to keep there and have the page wheel scroll up and down and this thing stays there, then we would use the fixed. There's another one called sticky, which we haven't gone over yet, so we'll leave that one out for now. And then they were talking about display. So that's position. Display can also work within this whole positioning and display, this positioning of your elements. So what happens with the display is you have block, you have inline, and you have inline block, then you have none, and then you have two others that's shown here, grid and flex, which we haven't gone over, so we won't talk about that yet. So think of it in terms like this, a block. So if everything is put into a square, if you will, right? Everything on your page is broke up into squares, how big the square is, or how big a rectangle it is, how tall. Everything is broken up into these squares. And when you're dealing with an inline, well, let me go back to what I'm stating. When you're dealing with a block level element, a block element starts on a new line every time you make a new block, or every time you make a new element that is a block element. So if I make an image, not image. If I do a heading, right? I do H1 right here. As soon as I do H2, even if I put it next to it over here, it's saying that it'll automatically start on a new line, right? So H1's here. If I do H2 right after it in the code, it still will come down to the next line and make the H2, and so on and so forth. H1 through H6, all block elements, all will start a new line. And we could show you guys some examples of that in a second. Then you have inline. Oh, actually, let's give you the examples of what block elements are, as far as some different ones you'll see. The div tag is a block element. The paragraph tag, the H1 through H6, the unordered lists, and I believe, and the ordered lists, and the list items, and also canvas, which we have not gone over. All right, so those are some examples of some block elements. They'll always, all those will start a new line. You create a div, it's going to create a new, going to go on to the next line. You create a paragraph, next line. H1 through H6, new line. Anytime you do an unordered list or an ordered list, I believe as well, it's going to start a new line. So if I'm in the middle of typing out some H1 or some paragraph or whatever, and right next to it in my text editor, I write, I don't go to the next line, I don't do any kind of line break. If I just put that, if I just put that list right next to it in the code, still going to go on to the next line on the actual browser. Okay, what else? Some inlines. Inlines are going to go straight across. Sorry about that. So inline stuff follows right along with what you type. So if you put a bunch of inputs or a bunch of buttons or a bunch of images or some spans, they'll fall one after another. They're not going to start a new line, one after another, okay? Now you have inline blocks. Inline blocks, well, actually, let me go back, sorry. In an inline element, height and width properties have no effect. So you could put a property of height and width in there, it won't change it if you're doing span or input or button or image. Now I'm kind of a little confused on image not having a height or width. I did think that did, but anyway, you guys let me know in the comments below. We'll learn that and we'll figure that out for you guys. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about inline block. Inline block is displayed in line, but the height and the width may be defined. They may also be used with the grid, flex, or table, as these are block level elements. So it changes it from a block in the sense of it's no longer a new line, but it's similar to inline in that sense. But similar to a block, you could change the height and width in an inline block property. When you put none, it removes the element and all of its children and makes them act like they never existed. So anything that was next to it will move over. If you just want to make it invisible but still take up the space, you'll use the visibility property instead of display. And then lastly, we talk about float, and float is a display property that you'll use. So let's say you have an image and you have some text next to it. If you want that text to go around the image, or the image be embedded within the text and the text go around it and float around it, then use the float tag. And we'll get into that and we'll show you some examples. All right, we also talked about the top to bottom layers of your elements, and we're not going to go into that right now. And we talked about fonts today, font families, and the suggestion was to go into fonts.google.com and look for font family stacks and add the links in there into your website using the font family stacks. That way it's web safe, as well as having another bunch of options in case one of those fonts is not recognized in your client's browsers. All right. We talked about the use of the pixel versus percent and then versus EM. M literally stands for the letter M. It used to represent that the character size would be literally the size of the letter M, but it's now translated into 16 pixels or 100%. So 100% in a font size, if you're utilizing the font size attribute or property, I'm not sure what you would call it, but if you're using font size, then and you give it 100%, then that would be 16 pixels. If you wanted 32 pixels, you'd give it 200%, and so on and so forth. If you want it to be 16 pixels and you want to use EM, then you would write 1 EM. If you wanted 32 pixels, you'd write 2 EMs, so on and so forth. Pics are static size pixels. So if you change your browser, then the PX will always stay the same. I believe I'm correct in this. You guys could, again, correct me if I'm wrong. Using percent, it will, and use 100%, that will be at 16 pixels, and it will be scalable. So if you put a font size at 100% and it's 16 pixels, then, and someone increases the resolution or whatever of their, if they're having a hard time seeing their screen, and they change that setting in Chrome or whatever browser they're using, that 16 pixels will scale and it will increase with the rest of the page. And again, you could change it to 200% if you wanted 32 pixels. EM is 16 pixels slash 100% and is also scalable. So that's just some side notes, you guys. Oh, and lastly, they suggested nowadays, since we have CSS3, that you now use REM, which stands for the root EM. So basically it's saying, ignore if there's anything above in the code that's defining the font size. With pixels, size is independent. With percentages, how is that working? I don't know if I wrote it down correctly. So basically what they're saying is if in the body section, or I'm sorry, if in the header you specify font type or font size as being percentage, let's say 200%, and it's 32 pixels, and you change it, I believe what it is if you change it down below to something else, then it adds the two. Pixels, I believe, just updates to the new one. If you change it to pixels, from pixels up here, pixels down here, and you change the size, I think it updates to the new tag. But again, I think percentages adds the two. With EM and percentages, size is inherited, so they will add it. So if you give it like 100% up here and 200% down here, so you want it 16 pixels, the entire length of the body of your page, and just one section you wanted 32, let's say, and you put it in 200% down here, literally what will happen is it will add 100% and 200%. You'll end up with 300%, not what you wanted. Same thing with EM. If you put 1 EM up here, and you want it to be 2 EM down here, and you write 2 EM, it will add the 2 and give 1 and 2, and it will give you literally 3 EM, which will be 48 pixels. Anyway, they have something new in CSS3 called REM, which is root EM. So if you're into using EM, then, and you put, let's say 500 REM, then it will use that new EM without reference to any others. That's how I understand it. So without further ado, you guys, let's get into some coding. I won't spend a whole lot of time, but we'll show you a few things. All right, so we're back at our, sorry about that, my dog is chewing on a chew toy in there. All right, so let's go ahead and add some text in our div right here next to the mascot, and we'll show you how to wrap it, and we'll show you a few different things. I think we went over positioning yesterday, if I recall. All right, so let's go ahead, and first thing we'll do, go ahead and, sorry, my dog is having a fun old time doing that. All right, Ella. See if I can get her to stop this. Sorry about that, you guys. All right, so let's see if we could do some of this stuff. I'm gonna take a quick peek over here and see if I could steal some idea real quick. That way I make sure I'm doing it right. All right, so yeah, I believe that should work all right. All right, so let's try this. Let's go back to our index over here. Excuse me. And we'll say, hello, everyone. Is that popping up? Oh, what's going on? What did I do? Did I make something fixed? What did I do? Why am I not seeing what's going on? You guys probably see it already. All right, so what do we got going on? We got a div as the class is the middle container. We got an image underneath it. Do we do anything to the image? Nope. All right. And we enter a div. Maybe it's because we made that div size so small. Let's go ahead and change that middle container to width equals 50%, which that's something else I learned today. Is let's actually take away the height. Can we do that? Let's see what we got going on. Expected in a variable. Where am I missing something? Talking about that. I don't know what it's talking about. All right, well, anyway, let's go back and see what we got going on here. Let's pull up a little preview. Let's see if it's fixed a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead. What do we do with our image? Anything at all? Oh. Let's do this 75%. All right, so make it a little bigger. Let's do margin auto. See what happens with that. All right, so margin auto will center your container. I don't like what's going on here. So let's go ahead and take the paragraph. All right, let's see what happens if we float our picture. So what do we call our image class? Just call it image, img. All right, so let's see what happens if we try that. So img, and we'll say position. I guess we're not doing position as much, are we? Let's try to use display float. Can we do that? What is float in? Now I'm gonna have to steal and go back and look again. Sorry, guys. Some of this stuff is just learning. Where are we? All right, so go over to our CSS. All right, so we did float. That just float, I guess. Okay. Sorry about the confusion, guys. All right, so and we'll do a float left. Let's see what happens. Anything? All right, that's not quite what I was thinking. All right, well, as you can see, it did pull up stuff to the right of it. That's not what I was looking for, though. So let's see what's going on over here. This is annoying. Keeps on pulling it up. So it does have a div beginning and div end. But divs are inline. What am I doing, you guys? Let's go back over here. All right, so we have a div within a div. But in this div alone, we have class is this. Another div. Inside that div. Yeah, well, I'll confuse you guys. I would have thought that it would just pull the stuff from the div next to it. Top container, div. Then we got H3, line break, another div, which is where this should have been. Image class. I'm rather confused right now. Let's go ahead and take that away and pull this guy inside of it. All right, so that's inside of the container. I could see that. So maybe it's because I made the container too big. But why is he just too big for the container? Or too, let's see. Let's do height. Let's try auto, see what happens. I have a feeling it's gonna be weird, but change it? Is it because I'm not paying attention to everything I just read to you guys? So a block element starts a new line, takes the entire width, and it's as big as the stuff that's in it. So I shouldn't need any of that. Oh, never mind. Let's see. Let's just do that, see what happens. So do we not have the mascot inside that div? Thought we did. Div, image class. What are we doing with the image again? Floating it left. So let's see what happens if we take away the float image for a second. So he's inside there. All right, so I don't know why. Very strange to me. I'm going to say again, with, what am I doing? I'm going to check out my other one. So our container, CSS. So we didn't even, yeah, we did. We said with 50%. And you gave margins. TextalignLeft. All right, so let's try some of that same stuff. All right, so let's begin again. Margin. We had 100 pixels, none. Pixels, none, if I recall. $150, auto 150. All right, so let's see what that does. Oops. So that gave us margins that pushed it away from everything. All right, that's fine. All right, so go back up here. And we did with 50% TextalignLeft. Let's see what that does. Okay. So now we have an auto for the, let's see, let's count what we did. We give it margin to give 150 on top, which we don't need that much. Let's just do 50. We did auto for the right side. We'll do 50 for the bottom and auto for the left side. And what do we have? That's a little bit better. And then we did text align left. Which it looks like it already kind of is. All right, so let's see. What are we dealing with? Are we doing an H3? H2. Which technically is a block element. So I wonder if I have to change that. Again, I'm learning along with you guys. So what do we have here? And then we added line height, which really doesn't make a difference too much in this, but we'll just show you guys. So boom, you do line height, and you can do 2, and I'll show you what it does. Give a little space between the words. And once again, let's see if we can get this thing to float. So what do we have? We have .img and float left, and see what happens. All right, so better. So as you could tell, this all went next to the mascot right there. I'm sure I could probably create a better width. So let's say 75% of the screen. Still didn't help. All right. Is it because I'm using, let's try something, you guys. Let's go ahead and just try something. Let's make their image, we'll make it float left, but let's also go ahead and make it display inline block. See what happens. Didn't do anything. What if we called it inline? And also didn't do anything. All right, so let's take that away. You guys, sorry, I'm not trying to confuse you. And let's make the image smaller. Let's go ahead and say width 20%. 20%. Let's see what that does. All right, so what it's doing is it's making it 20% of this actual container. And I guess the container is going to take up as much space, I guess, as, so we got 50, we're taking up 50% of the screen with this container, right? We said that over here. Middle container width is 50%. We're aligning the text to the left, but we're floating this to the left. So this is going to left first, and this is going to go as much around it as we can. If we make this into a paragraph over here, instead of H2, let's make a paragraph. And we'll say, this is the Atom Editor mascot. His name is Joe. He's very happy to be here. He loves coding just like you. So as you can see, it's nice that it's able to go right next to the picture right there. Anyway, that's just a little bit about displaying what the floating tag is. Sorry it took me so long to get to that section or to get to that point. All right, let's see. All right, let's go ahead and save this. Go over here and save this. And let's see what we can move on to. Let's go ahead real quick and talk about font size, and then we'll finish up for the day. All right, so if we go over to what we learned today, and we say that's an H3, and we'll go in here and we'll say all H3s. Well, as you can see, I already have a font family in there. If we pull up, this is our old version. If we pull this up and say fonts.google.com, TextalignLeft.com. All right. Let's see what we can pull up. We don't need that. All right, so on here you got all these different fonts. We'll just go ahead and show you this one right here. So this is Montserrat. If we add it to our list, right? And then we think we just click on this. Okay. Let's go ahead and move this over here. So look, you guys, here is your link reference that you stick over here in your CSS. So go right here, oh, not in your CSS, in your title or your head. So right underneath your link to your own style sheet, you link that, right? And then come back there, go back to Chrome, and it says specify in CSS. So we're going to use this right here. So font family Montserrat sans serif. And we go back over here and we say all of our H3s, we want to use font family Montserrat. You need those little single quotes, and that should work. So let's see what we got. So change it. All right, see that? So all H3s are now that right there. All right, so if we go into font size, then we could choose, let's say, I don't know, 30 pixels. It overrides whatever H3 normally is and brings you that. And once again, let's say 32 pixels just for the sake of showing our example of EMs versus. All right, so we got 32 pixels, looks like that. Or remember, 1 EM equals 16 pixels. So if we do 2 EM, it should be the same. Right. And 3 EM will be 48. Right? And if we do 48 pixels instead, we can show you that it's the same. Is that the same? Let's see. Almost look different, but let's see. Keep your eye on the screen. I think it looks the same. Okay, now if we did, let's see, how are we going to try this out? I don't really feel like getting into all that at this moment, you guys. But like I said before, EM and percentages, if I was to say over here, or let's say even further, if I was to say in my head up here, if I was to give some kind of, or shoot, even up here somewhere, if I was to say H3s are now, so that was H3s, H3s are now 2 EMs, and then in here I also do 3 EMs. That's going to add up to 5 EMs, you guys. That's not what you want. So just be aware of that. Percentages and EMs add up. REMs don't, and pixels don't. So we can show you what REM does. Same thing. Okay. And you, of course, you got percentages. So we could say 20%, and I'm not sure what the percentage is based upon. So let's see what happens. All right, so it must be 20% if it's original. Oh, that's right. I forgot you guys. 100% is 16 pixels. And if we wanted 48 pixels, we should do 300%, and it should work. Right? Just like our 16 pixels. Let's check out 16 pixels again, or 48 pixels, I mean. And what does it look like? Just the same. All right. Anything else within the fonts I want to show you guys? Nope, that's it. All right, so you guys got the root EM, the REM, you got the difference between pixels, percentages, and EMs. Pixels are static. Percentages are 100% equals 16 pixels. Is scalable. EM 16 is one EM is 16 pixels. It's also scalable. And yeah, you guys, that's it for today. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry about the getting caught up on my different stuff over here with the floating, but hopefully you guys got to see what it's like. Anyway, enjoy your day, enjoy your weekend. We probably will see you tomorrow. We don't have class tomorrow, but I'll try to get another video out because we're doing a little self-study. All right, peace and blessings.